Do you remember when a hat brim and a low camera could make a man look 10 feet tall? Here's what the posters never said. Crews carved trenches into western streets so eyelines matched. Contracts quietly capped co-star height to keep a leading man taller. And wardrobe refitted elevator shoes twice a year to hold the illusion. The lens could fake inches, but never presence. Tonight, we count the compact legends who made the frame obey. Lock your number 1 now. No edits after number 2. Ready to test the camera's oldest magic? Number 10, Burgess Meredith, the underdog voice that filled the room. He wasn't big. He never pretended to be. Burgess Meredith walked on with a compact frame and a voice that hit the back row like a bell. If you first met him in black and white, an old set with rabbit ears and a stubborn dial, you remember the jolt. He looked small. Then he spoke, and the room went quiet. Stage work taught him the trick. He threw his voice like a rope, pulled you closer without moving an inch. In Of Mice and Men, he didn't fake height. He leaned into stillness and that humane intelligence that made a glance feel like a decision. Those matinee years taught us that steadiness. The war years came. He entertained troops, then rode out the chilly politics that iced careers. Radio saved the day. On the air, inches vanish. Presence remains. And Meredith sounded 10 feet tall, dry, exact, impossible to ignore. Television found the showman. As the penguin, he waddled, cackled, and filled the frame with posture and timing. Kids laughed. Parents smiled over coffee at the kitchen table. You didn't need to tower to loom. You needed rhythm. Then, the late-life thunder. Rocky, a gravel-voiced trainer, pushing a long shot up the steps and into a city's memory. Mickey didn't dominate Stallone. He leaned on him the way a coach leans on a kid who might surprise the world. The lines crackled. You can probably hear one right now. No trench, no elevator shoe, just focus. He knew what he brought. Urgency, grit, humor so dry it crackled. He let the camera come to him. For those who remember that knit cap and that jaw like sandpaper, it was never about size. It was about belief. If the underdog can win with voice and will, then the next name proves how 5'5" can turn into pure dread the second the lights dim. Number 9, Peter Lorre, 5'5" of pure dread. The room always felt smaller when Peter Lorre stepped into it. He didn't need height. He had those sleepless eyes, that careful whisper, and a face that could fold from pleading to threat in a heartbeat. If you first met him on a late-night black and white broadcast, you remember leaning forward without meaning to. He drew you in like a magnet draws a pin. He started in Europe with a performance that rattled nerves from Berlin to Brussels. In M, he played a notorious murderer and made fear feel private. Less about screams, more about the throb under the skin. No shouting, no wild flailing. Just a cornered man whose panic seeped through the frame. Even now, older as we are, the memory of it sits in the chest. When the winds turned ugly in the 30s, he left. New language, new streets, no promises. Alfred Hitchcock spotted what mattered: intent. Lorre didn't play big, he played true. In The Man Who Knew Too Much, he smiled, like someone watching a clock only he could hear. That smile told you trouble was already in the next room. Hollywood tried to measure him and gave up. You can't measure gravity. The Maltese Falcon needed a man who could make lies sound like lullabies. Lorre did it with a single soft syllable. Casablanca needed a note of danger that never raised its voice. He slipped it in like a pin under silk. He wasn't tall, but he could tilt a scene. Then came the great contrast. Lorre beside Sidney Greenstreet, whose height and girth made the pairing look like a chess problem. Rook and bishop, menace and murmur. The trick wasn't trickery. No trenches, no trick shoes. Directors simply let the camera sit close and listen. Lorre's voice, half velvet, half vinegar, did the lifting. What we loved, especially those of us who watched him by the glow of a stubborn TV tube, was the way he made quiet feel dangerous. The fingers steepled under the chin, the head tilt that said, "I know a secret." He taught a generation that power can arrive in a small frame with perfect timing. If dread can arrive softly and still take the whole room, then the next legend proves how a compact body can wrestle physics itself and win. Number 8, Buster Keaton, gravity's favorite target. He was small, compact, and built like a question mark that refused to bend. Buster Keaton didn't roar. He stared. The face didn't move, and the world fell down around it. If you first saw him on late-night TV, fuzzy print, piano on the soundtrack, you remember that hush. You laughed with your hand over your mouth because the danger felt real. He learned the hard way. As a boy in vaudeville, his father tossed him like luggage, not cruelty, training. Buster figured out how to fall without breaking, to twist midair and land on the safe side of pain. That low center, close to the floor, made balance second nature. He could skid on gravel and stop exactly where he meant to, as if gravity were a partner, not a rule. On film, he turned that pact into poetry. In Sherlock Jr., a torrent of water slams him off a locomotive and onto the tracks. He went home with a headache and kept working. Years later, an X-ray showed a neck fracture he never knew he had. In Steamboat, Bill Jr., an entire housefront drops toward him. One open window, one marked spot on the ground. He stands still. The frame misses him by inches. Even now, older and wiser, it makes the stomach flip. Watch the general and feel the math. A small man, running a big machine, timing every step, so the wheels and the body share a rhythm. No tricks with height. No angles to cheat the eye, just a compact frame and the nerve to stay put while everything else moves at speed. Hollywood tried to put him in a box when sound came in. The stone face didn't sing, the suits took control, the pictures got smaller. But time has a way of sorting things out. Television found him again in the 50s. A commercial here, a guest spot there, and suddenly, a new generation discovered the man who could be funny without blinking. Those of us who caught those reruns remember the surprise. This little fellow was the bravest person in the room. Keaton's secret wasn't size, it was trust. Trust in the gag, in the mark on the floor, in the audience. He promised he wouldn't flinch, and we promised we wouldn't look away. If a small, steady body can wrestle physics to a draw, then the next legend shows how shrinking yourself on purpose, hat, cane, shoes a size too small, can conquer the whole world. Number 7, Charlie Chaplin, the small silhouette that owned the world. Bowler hat, toothbrush mustache, coat too tight, trousers too big, shoes from a taller man. Charlie Chaplin made himself smaller on purpose, and then made the world follow. If you first met him on a Sunday broadcast, you remember the hush when the little tramp shuffled in. He turned a curb into a stage and strangers into neighbors. That look wasn't just a gag, it was a compass. A bully lifts him by the lapels, and your ribs tense for the small guy. Chaplin knew that reflex and played it like a violin. A glance skyward, a dust-off of the sleeves, a brave little tilt of the chin. The fight didn't need to be fair to be beautiful. Watch the boxing in City Lights, and you feel the footwork in your ankles. He circles, feints, slips behind the referee. In The Kid, he runs with the awkward grace of a father who would rather be caught than let go. In modern times, the machine swallows him, and he still finds a way to be human in the gears. None of it depends on stature, it's timing and patience, a face that makes millions think the same thought at once. Behind the tenderness was steel. In 1919, he co-founded United Artists and traded inches for ownership. He wrote, directed, starred, and often composed, turning star into author. That's why so many of us, decades later, feel like we know him. He didn't just perform, he invited. When he finally spoke, he meant it. The closing plea in The Great Dictator isn't the tramp at all, but the man, earnest, unafraid. The same compact figure that once tripped over canes now stands still and uses words like a bell. You remember the first time you really heard him, not because he was tall, but because he was right. If a small frame can carry a world with grace and nerve, then the next legend shows how 5'3" can fill a theater the moment the band strikes up. Number 6, Sammy Davis Jr. Short frame, stadium-sized presence. 5'3" on paper, 10 feet the moment the lights rose. Sammy Davis Jr. stepped out with a grin that said he knew every beat in the room, and a timing that made the room obey. If you first saw him on a variety show, living room lamp low, family leaning in, you remember the shock. He started soft. Then the band hit. The shoes blurred, and and the stage got small. He grew up in a trunk, practically, born into a performing family, on stage before most of us could spell vaudeville, tap, drums, trumpet, gags, impressions. He could turn a mic check into applause. Nightclubs didn't always want him. Too young, too short, too many reasons to say no. He answered with craft. Every step landed like a snare drum. Every note arrived dead center. The trick wasn't to look taller. It was to make height irrelevant. There was hardship. A car wreck took an eye, and he rebuilt his act without self-pity, folding the patch into the look, folding the story into the humor. He learned to turn the jab before it landed, to beat critics to the punchline and leave them laughing with him, not at him. That's an old showbiz truth many of us grew up on. If you own the joke, it can't own you. Broadway tried to measure him against inches in Golden Boy, short star, tall leading lady, worried producers. So he trained until the boxing scenes stung, and the love story read from the balcony. The show didn't just work, it roared. He learned another truth there. Chemistry beats tape measure math. Vegas learned it next. Rooms that once kept him outside ended up begging for dates, and the contracts changed because he changed the room. By the time the Candyman sweetened the charts, he'd proven that a song, a step, and a smile could rewire a town. Honors came later, but the real trophy was night after night of standing crowds and sore hands. What made Sammy vast wasn't volume, it was variety. He could spin from a soft ballad into a drum break, flip into a mimic of Half the Marquee, and then finish with a tap routine so clean you felt it in your knees. For those of us who remember watching with a cup of tea cooling by the ashtray, it felt like catching lightning on regular television. Quick poll for us old-timers. Did you first see Sammy on a TV variety show or hear him on the radio? Type TV or radio. If a 5'3" comet can make a theater feel like a stadium, then the next name proves that a 5'2" firecracker once outdrew the tallest idols at the box office. Number 5, Mickey Rooney, America's smallest box office giant. 5'2", yet for 3 straight years, he topped the box office. If you grew up on Saturday matinees, you remember the surprise. This kid-sized comet, outdrawing Gable and Cooper. Rooney didn't play tall. He played alive. Quick feet, bright grin, a pulse you could feel in the balcony. The run was the Andy Hardy pictures. Small-town scrapes, nervous romance, a tune or two. They landed when the country needed light, and he delivered it at speed. Many of us first met him on snowy TV prints. The picture weak, but the feeling strong. He wasn't pretending to be bigger. He made energy the star. Then life widened. Service. A town that had moved on, casting rooms that quietly measured inches. The boy parts no longer fit, so he pivoted. Out went the grin on command. In came men with mileage, cornermen, hustlers, strivers who'd taken a hit and learned from it. The spark stayed. It just carried weight. The late career turn sealed it. The Black Stallion gave him a retired jockey. Small because the job demands it. Wise because time does. No trenches, no trick souls. Just truth. A compact body finally matched to a role. The work clean and proud. That nod he earned wasn't nostalgia, it was recognition. What always made Rooney larger wasn't inches. It was tempo. He could hit a scene like a drum roll, tap, tap, go, or let a quiet beat breathe. Pair him with a partner and he'd bounce. Leave him alone and he'd steer the room. For those of us who remember him with Judy, the effect never changed. The face stayed young, the talent grew up. He proved a quiet law. Old Hollywood tried to hide with boxes and angles. The lens measures more than height. It measures will, wit, timing. And he kept all three like lucky coins. If a 5'2" firecracker could outrun the tall idols, then the next name shows how the short half of a duo could sell out houses and turn small into thunder. Number 4, Lou Costello, the little guy who turned laughter into thunder. 5'5", wide-eyed, already funny before he said a word. Put him next to Bud Abbott, tall, sleek, a human exclamation point, and the picture snapped into focus. The short half and the straight man. Chaos and control. If you first saw them on a flickering TV after dinner, You remember leaning forward as the words started to race. Lou's secret wasn't height, it was acceleration. He could ramp a scene from polite to pandemonium in 10 seconds. Voice climbing, hands spinning, feet churning like he'd been wound with a key. Hey, Abbott wasn't just a catchphrase, it was a starting pistol. The audience knew the sprint had begun, and we loved the run. Then came the routine that turned them into furniture in American living rooms. Who's on first? A tangle of simple words. Who? What? I don't know. Made into a maze by timing. Lou played confusion like an instrument, losing the thread on purpose and finding it again just in time to trip over it. Hollywood followed the sound. The early 40s hits rolled in, fast and cheerful. And suddenly, the little guy was a box office engine. Offstage, he showed a different kind of muscle. On a war bond tour with Abbott, he worked rooms like a prize fighter, leaping onto counters, climbing anything that gave the back row a view, turning applause into signatures. The total hit the kind of number you repeat to friends. More than $85 million in bonds. Small frame, big lift. There was pain, too, the kind you don't joke about. On the worst day, a parent can know he still went on and finished the show, then fell apart when the lights died. Older as we are now, we remember that story with a quiet respect. The laughs were real. So was the steel. Costello's gift was making scale into a punchline he controlled. He fell harder, popped up faster, and sold the impact with a face that could go from innocence to alarm in a blink. That contrast with Abbott, tall and calm, short and volcanic, never got old because the wiring was perfect. One sparked, one grounded, the circuit lit every time. If the short half of a duo could fill theaters and move a nation to its feet, then the next name shows how 5'5" could make a room smaller just by speaking, compact, ruthless, unforgettable. Number 3, Edward G. Robinson. Compact, ruthless, unforgettable, 5'5", and built like a question you didn't dare answer. Edward G. Robinson didn't walk into a scene so much as occupy it. Chin set, eyes narrowed, voice clipped like it had places to be. If you first met him on a late-night broadcast, snow on the screen and a bowl of peanuts nearby, you remember that look. It wasn't volume, it was voltage. He came to America small, foreign-tongued, and unpromised. Romania to New York, Yiddish to English, stage to studio. The face wasn't leading man, and the inches didn't help. So he weaponized everything else. Diction like a switchblade, timing that cut the air into pieces he could arrange. In Little Caesar, he didn't try to seem taller. He made everyone else seem less. That sharp chin, those quick, hard consonants. He turned a compact body into a moving deadline. Studios fussed with angles and blocking. Sure, low shots, close frames, partners seated when he stood. But the truth is simpler. Robinson had gravity. Stand him beside anyone, and your eye still finds him. He could intimidate without raising his voice, threaten without moving a muscle. That's why we still quote him under our breath when a conversation gets tight. Then watch the range. In Double Indemnity, he's not the heavy, he's the human lie detector. The one man in the room who smells smoke before the match is struck. No height games, no bluster, just a mind that runs hotter than the rest. In Key Largo, he brings heat the size of Florida to a storm-lashed room and makes you feel the barometer drop. You can almost hear the sweat bead. What those of us of a certain age remember is how efficient he was. No wasted glance, no extra syllable. He could sell greed, fear, or pride with a half turn of the mouth. Cast him as a boss, and he felt inevitable. Cast him as a decent man, and he felt anchored, like a short, stubborn lighthouse you trust when the weather turns. Off-screen, the spine matched the stare. He spoke his mind, took stands that cost him, and still found his way back to the work. By then, he didn't need tricks or billing games. He needed a chair, a line, and 10 seconds to own the moment. For all the anecdotes about platforms and camera math, his real platform was discipline. He showed up prepared, and the lens did the rest. If you first met Robinson on late-night reruns, drop your channel plus city. Someone will smile seeing it. If menace can be compact and conscience can be quick, then the next name proves how 5'5" can feel like a lit fuse. One that turns a room into a powder magazine the second he smiles. Number 2, James Cagney. 5'5" with a lit fuse. He didn't enter a scene, he detonated into it. James Cagney moved like a drummer. Hips first, shoulders tight, fists ready, eyes bright with mischief. 5'5" on the call sheet, but on the screen, he read as pure velocity. If you first watched him on a late show with the volume low, you remember the jolt, that walk, that snap, that sense that trouble had just found its favorite pair of shoes. The secret wasn't size, it was tempo. Cagney cut lines into bursts and spit them like sparks. In The Public Enemy, one breakfast turned into a national memory, with a grapefruit and a stare that said the rules had changed. Suddenly, the gangster wasn't a lumbering brute. He was quick, funny, mean, and impossible to pin down. You could feel him coil between syllables. Then he turned and danced. Years of tap training gave his feet ideas of their own in Yankee Doodle Dandy. He flew, knees high, heels like pistons, an explosion of patriot rhythm that made the stage look small. The size that might have cramped a slower man made him faster, tighter, more precise. He took home Best Actor for it. He won the prize that says, "Don't argue," and he did it without growing an inch. Cagney was also a worker. He showed up, knowing the beat of every scene and the weight of every pause. Directors didn't need to fake height when the camera couldn't keep up with his energy anyway. Cast him as a crook, and he felt like a fuse burning toward the powder. Cast him as a straight shooter, and he felt like the guy you wanted in the alley when the lights went out. And when he went volcanic, he took the roof. White Heat ends on a catwalk with a smile that belongs in every montage. Top of the world. A small man standing above everything he clawed his way through, fireworks and fate answering back. Those of us who saw it young can still hear the echo. Cagney proved that inches don't matter when urgency does. He sold speed, nerve, and a joy in performance that made the lens lean forward to catch him. If dynamite can come in small sticks, then our number 1 shows how a studio could move Earth, literally, to make a leading man look taller and turn a myth into a box office machine. Number 1, Alan Ladd, the studio's height illusion machine. He wasn't tall by leading man standards, and the town knew it. So the town did what it does best. It built a myth. Crews cut trenches into dirt streets. Marks were raised an inch here, lowered an inch there. Hats brimmed lower, lenses tilted higher, and a quiet man with ice in his voice walked into frame, like the answer to a question nobody dared ask. If you first saw him on a Sunday matinee, popcorn soft, projector hum steady, you remember the jolt. Alan Ladd didn't loom, he focused. Paramount learned early that the solution wasn't to pretend, it was to choreograph. Pair him with Veronica Lake, tiny, cool, all cheekbones and mystery, and suddenly, the picture balanced like a scale. In This Gun for Hire and The Glass Key, he stood still and let angles do the lifting. Partners sat when he stood. Doorways framed him like a portrait. The result wasn't fakery, it was design. The camera made a promise. Look at him, not past him. Then came the frontier and the legend. Shane put him against mountains that made everyone look small, and somehow he looked largest of all. Crews worked the ground, so eyelines met where they should. But the trick you remember isn't in the dirt, it's in the stillness, the way he listened to the boy, the way the light caught the holster, the way that last line fell like a verdict. There's no living with a killing. You can feel it even now, older and wiser, because it isn't a shout, it's a truth said softly. That restraint is why the ending lands. Opposites made him sharper. With Sophia Loren in Boy on a Dolphin, sets were nudged, walkways raised, frames pinched. Anything to keep the picture honest without calling attention to itself. The charge between them did the work. Her sunlit blaze against his frost-clear calm. You watched the space tighten until it hummed. Why did it work? Because Ladd understood negative space. He moved less and meant more. He let silence carry weight and turned a half smile into intent. A smaller frame became an advantage. The camera came to him. He didn't push, he drew. For those of us who remember squinting at a silvered screen or a stubborn black and white set, the The illusion was never insulting. It was craftsmanship. The town might have nudged the ground a little, but he did the real lifting. Economy, control, a presence that read in capital letters. Audiences didn't buy a trick. They bought a man who looked like he'd thought everything through and chosen not to waste a word. If a studio could move Earth to fit a star, then it proved something we've seen all night. The lens can fake inches, but it can't fake presence. And the smallest giants never needed the help. Hollywood spent a century hiding inches with trenches, platforms, and careful frames. But the lens never faked presence. We felt it in Burgess Meredith's sandpaper grit, Peter Lorre's whisper that shrank a room, Buster Keaton's nerve against gravity, and Chaplin's small silhouette carrying a big world. We heard it when Sammy Davis Jr. turned a stage into a stadium, when Mickey Rooney's tempo outran taller idols, when Lou Costello's chaos turned laughter into thunder. We flinched at Cagney's lit fuse and watched Alan Ladd's stillness bend the frame to him. If the camera could cheat height but not soul, then here's the question for us who grew up with rabbit ears and matinees. Which scene made you forget inches completely? Drop the moment and the star in the comments.